Childcare is a wife's job, isn't it? Not just childcare, but housework and taking care of the husband, it's all the wife's job. My husband, Michael, yelled at me with a contorted face. His words filled my heart with frustration and sadness. Unable to sort out my emotions, I stood there dumbfounded when I suddenly heard crying. Startled by Michael's loud voice, our twins had started crying at the same time. I hurried to soothe them, but Michael, annoyed by their crying, cursed and quickly left the house. Where did the kind husband I used to know go? When was the last time I saw him smile gently, the way I loved? He changed after we got married. He treats me like a housekeeper and behaves unreasonably. Even now, with our children born, his arrogant attitude remains the same. Moreover, he pushes all the childcare onto me, demanding I handle the housework and his personal care as well. I had hoped that he might return to his kinder self after our children were born, but that hope was quickly shattered. How many times have I hoped and been disappointed by Michael? A sense of emptiness wells up inside me. Still, being on parental leave, I have no choice but to rely on him financially, so I grit my teeth and endure his unreasonable demands. Time passed, and one day when he came home from work, he said, "You know, I got laid off. So you're gonna have to support me now." He said it with a smirk, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. To that, I firmly replied, "Isn't it a husband's job to earn? I have no use for a husband who can't fulfill his duties. Get out." My name is Jennifer. I joined my current company right out of college, and before I knew it, I was almost 30. While my friends from school were getting married and finding happiness, I had been focused solely on my career and hadn't had any significant relationships. Feeling a bit anxious about this, I finally found a boyfriend. His name was Michael. Michael was a colleague who transferred to my department, and we hit it off at a company social event, leading to us dating. He was 2 years younger than me, but I really liked his calm and generous nature. After a few years of dating at work, we got married when I was 32. I thought I would have a happy married life with the gentle Michael, but his true colors showed soon after our marriage. Michael started treating me like a housekeeper from the first day we lived together. "Hey! What about dinner? I'm starving here." While I was busy unpacking from our move, Michael yelled from behind. Shocked by his rough tone and words, which I had never heard before, I froze. "Hey! Are you listening? Get dinner ready, now. Hey!" Yelled it again, I turned to Michael with a forced smile. "Sorry, I haven't finished setting up the kitchen yet. Should I go buy something from the store? Or maybe we can order delivery." Before I could finish, Michael clicked his tongue in irritation and walked towards the door. When I hurried after him, Michael glared at me and spat out, "I'll eat out." Then maybe I should come too?" I said that and hurried to get ready, but Michael abruptly shut me down with a "Don't come with me." I froze, my body trembling, as Michael continued in an irritated tone. "Make sure you finish cleaning up before I get back. Can't relax in such a cluttered room." With that, he roughly closed the door and left to eat alone. I stood there, stunned, rooted to the spot. Was that really Michael just now? I found myself muttering. The Michael I just saw was nothing like the always gentle and calm Michael I knew, filling me with anxiety. Maybe he was just really hungry. I held a faint hope that he might return to his usual self after eating out. But days passed, and the kind Michael never returned. However, at work, where others could see him, he behaved as gently as before. The drastic difference between Michael at work and at home made me wonder if he had a split personality. So, my life, far from the happy newlywed life I had imagined, continued, and about 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Moreover, it wasn't just one baby, but twins. The realization that I was carrying twins filled my heart with joy. Even after finding out about the pregnancy, Michael's unreasonable behavior towards me at home didn't change, but I hoped that he would return to his kinder self once the children were born. Time passed, my belly grew significantly, and I took maternity and parental leave from work. And then, I successfully gave birth to twins. I was truly happy to have given birth to twins, but the task of caring for them was several times harder than I had imagined. Despite being prepared, the first-time parenting experience meant I spent every day incredibly busy. However, Michael didn't help at all. Instead, he tried to make me do all the housework and even take care of his personal needs as before the birth. Unable to take it anymore, I finally spoke up to Michael. "Hey, Michael. You can see I'm swamped with taking care of these kids. I can't possibly do everything. Can't you at least change a diaper or something?" At my words, Michael's face turned red with anger as he yelled at me. "Huh? Why should I have to do that? I'm the husband. A husband's job is to earn money outside. So, childcare is a wife's job, right? Not just childcare, but housework and taking care of the husband, it's all the wife's job." Michael's words left my heart a mess of frustration and sadness. As I stood there, dazed and unable to sort out my emotions, I was jolted back to reality by a crying sound. Perhaps startled by Michael's loud voice, the twins started crying simultaneously. I rushed to soothe them, but Michael spat out, "Shut up. I can't stand this house," and fled outside. This behavior shattered any hope I had that he might become the kind man he was before once the children were born. How many times have I been hopeful and then disappointed by Michael? A sense of emptiness surged within me. Yet, during my maternity leave, I had no choice but to rely on Michael financially, so I gritted my teeth and endured it. I somehow managed to handle the twins' childcare, the bare minimum housework, and Michael's personal care. Since my parents live far away, they couldn't often come to help. I spent every night soothing the twins who cried at the same time, resulting in constant sleep deprivation. Amid these challenging days, I eventually became ill and had to be hospitalized. However, Michael, claiming he was busy with work, didn't even visit me. When my parents found out that I had collapsed, they immediately came to help and stayed at my house for about a week. They took care of me while I was in the hospital and also looked after the twins, who were steadily growing. Their support allowed me to focus on getting better. Meanwhile, Michael didn't visit me in the hospital, nor did he return home. My parents and I tried to contact him several times to no avail. He was purposely ignoring our calls, although we confirmed he was regularly going to work. What a terrible man, I muttered to myself on the hospital bed. At that moment, I completely gave up on relying on Michael for anything. Once I recovered and was discharged, I returned home, and my parents went back to theirs. A few days later, Michael casually returned home without any apology or words of concern for me. However, I no longer felt upset or angry with him. My feelings for Michael had completely cooled off. This hospitalization taught me the importance of relying on others. My parents scolded and cried over me, saying, "Why did you keep silent until you broke down? Why don't you ask for help? It doesn't matter that we live far away. If you just said you needed help when I called, we would have come no matter where we lived. Raising children is tough, especially two. Use whatever help you can get. We understand you don't want to trouble us, but you ended up harming yourself and being unable to care for your children. Of course, Michael is the main problem, but you staying silent and thinking you have no choice but to handle everything yourself is also an issue." Hearing my parents' tearful and trembling voices, I realized I had chosen to silently comply with Michael's way of life. From then on, I learned to seek help from those around me, not just my parents. I started utilizing community childcare support services to find time for myself and joined a community of parents raising twins. Just knowing I wasn't alone brought me a sense of mental relief. Surprisingly, Michael, who had once seemed so terrifying, no longer scared me. He was just a coward. Perhaps he was accumulating too much stress at work, and he made me his outlet. He probably felt superior because he was financially supporting me, who was overwhelmed with taking care of the kids. His not harming the children wasn't due to any ethical sense. He just knew the disadvantages he would face if something happened to them, having seen tragic incidents on TV. Strangely, Michael and I had been getting along for over half a year. I took care of the housework and childcare because that's supposedly a wife's job. And Michael earned the money, as that's a husband's duty. There was no love between us, and he did nothing fatherly, but he did provide a stable environment with food, clothing, and shelter. Amidst this life, the twins grew up well and turned one. When they finally started daycare, I cried tears of relief the first time I left them there. Even though it was only for an hour during the adjustment period. It felt liberating to have some time to myself. Once the kids completed the adjustment period and started full-day daycare, I promptly returned to work. I had planned to return to work coinciding with their daycare start, but I had to take it as days off during the adjustment period. Working again, I found myself genuinely smiling. The twins are adorable, but conversing with adults who can speak properly was calming. Whether it was with colleagues or my boss, and even if the discussions were about work, I felt fulfilled every day. I was determined to work hard and save up money. Just when I was thinking this, Michael came home from work and blurted out, "You know, I got laid off. So now you gotta support me." I had heard rumors about staff reductions happening soon at his company, and it seemed Michael was one of those let go. He was never great at his job, making careless mistakes and even once shredding important documents. He probably got by for a while due to his good nature at work, but it looks like they finally gave up on him. "It's good timing since you're returning to work now. From now on, you can support me," he said with a smirk. I let out a huge sigh at Michael's command and firmly told him, "What are you even saying? Support you? Don't be ridiculous. You didn't help at all with childcare when it was most difficult and made me do all the housework and personal care, and now you have the audacity to say that?" It was the first time I had raised my voice so much, and Michael seemed quite shocked. He stood with his mouth half open and eyes wide. But then he snapped back to reality and yelled, "You! What kind of way is that to talk to your husband?" Unintimidated by Michael's yelling, I continued, "You said childcare is a wife's job, right? So, earning money is the husband's job, isn't it? I have no use for a husband who can't fulfill his duties. Get out." "Huh? Get out? Calm down a bit," Michael stammered, unable to hide his confusion. "I'm saying we should get divorced. I'm better off without a husband like you. Please leave quickly," I said coldly, and Michael's face turned pale. "Are you serious?" "Of course I am. After all you've done, why wouldn't I want a divorce?" Michael stammered, and because. Over and over. We had been living like this since the beginning of our marriage. He thought I wanted this life because I hadn't mentioned divorce before. That's ridiculous. I only didn't say anything because my savings alone wouldn't have been enough to raise the kids until I could return to work. When I was hospitalized, I had been preparing to divorce you. Despite feeling boiling anger inside, the words that came out were shockingly cold. Realizing my determination, Michael glared at me and spat out his last words in defiance. "Fine. I'll leave. I've had enough of a useless wife like you." And with that, Michael stomped towards the front door. On his way out, Michael kept muttering to himself in a loud voice, saying things like, "If you're gonna apologize, now's the time. Going back to work with twins will just cause trouble at the workplace, and you can't live without me." Without responding to any of it, I just followed him to the door and turned around. "This is your last chance. You got something to say to me, right?" he asked, his face red with anger yet sweating profusely, a bizarre expression. I just smiled at him and said, "Don't worry about the divorce papers, I'll file them." Hearing this, Michael's face contorted with a big sigh, and he angrily clicked his tongue. As he reached for the door, he glared back at me and yelled, "Don't you dare regret this," before storming out. The moment he left, I quickly locked the door and put on the chain. I let out a sigh of relief, followed by a dry laugh. There's no way I would regret this. I immediately went to Michael's bedroom, opened the wardrobe, and took out the divorce papers. I knew that he had hidden a pre-filled divorce form in the back of this wardrobe since right after the twins were born. He had threatened to divorce me if I couldn't handle the housework and childcare. I quickly filled in my part and went to the office with the twins to submit the divorce papers. After returning home, I called a locksmith to change the locks on the front door to ensure Michael couldn't enter. I sent a brief message to Michael, informing him about the filing of the divorce papers and the changing of the locks. Soon after, I returned to work full-time. The twins were doing well, happily crying, laughing, eating, and enjoying their time at daycare. I cherished the peaceful days that followed. Then, about 6 months after the divorce, something intriguing happened at work. One of my subordinates, Lily, a very popular and beautiful young employee among the male staff, started making odd remarks to me. "Jennifer, Michael is really not a morning person, right? He hardly ever wakes up, and it troubles me every day." "What?" "You know, I love cooking, so I make a lot of breakfast, but he's such a sleepyhead that it often gets cold before he eats." She bragged about this with a smug grin. But when I tried to inquire more, Lily quickly said, "Oh, what am I saying? Please forget what I just said," and refused to speak any further. From her comments, I was convinced that Michael was now living at Lily's place. After being kicked out by me, Michael had tried to go back to his parents, but it seems his in-laws disowned him, saying that a husband abandoned by his wife and children is a disgrace. I had little contact with my in-laws, who lived quite far away and were rather old-fashioned and difficult people. Recently, I received a call from my father-in-law, apologizing and informing me about their disowning of Michael. "Jennifer, it's been a while. I heard from Michael. I'm really sorry about our son. We've disowned him. We regret not being able to help you before." And then, I even received words of support, saying that I could ask for help with anything if I ever faced any trouble. This is probably how Michael, having been kicked out of his parents' home and with nowhere else to go, ended up moving into Lily's house. Lily began to repeatedly tell me things like, "I'm the only one who really understands Michael, and I'm glad that nuisance is finally out of the way." From her statements, I was convinced that the two of them had been having an affair since Michael and I were married. I gathered evidence through other employees' testimonies and hiring a private investigator. As a result, I managed to collect definitive proof of their affair during our marriage. Lily had been openly talking to colleagues about her relationship with Michael and had boasted by sending several photos of them looking intimate. Some clearly taken in a hotel, making it relatively easy to gather evidence of their affair. Armed with this conclusive evidence, I consulted a lawyer and sued both Michael and Lily for damages. Michael yelled, "Why now?" To which I replied, "It's all because of Lily." When Lily confronted me screaming in a high-pitched voice, I just smiled sweetly and said, "Thanks for confessing that you've been having an affair with Michael all along. Honestly, I had no idea he was cheating. But, thanks to you, I was able to gather evidence and sue both of you for damages." Lily twisted her once beautiful face into something monstrous as she yelled at me. However, it was her fault for trying to assert dominance over me for a moment of superiority. She could have stayed silent and nothing would have been revealed. I responded with the biggest smile I've had recently, reminding her to quickly pay the alimony. A few days after the alimony demand, Michael called me. "Jennifer, it's been a while." His voice lacked the fierceness it once had, sounding weak and defeated. "If you have something to say, please go through my lawyer. I'm hanging up now." As I firmly stated this, Michael began to sound desperate. "Wait! Look, I can't pay the alimony! I haven't found a new job yet. I was being supported by Lily." "Your circumstances are none of my concern. Please pay the alimony." I said this dismissively, and I could hear Michael sniffling over the phone. "Don't be so cold. Lily broke up with me. I didn't know she was so heartless." Apparently, Michael had tried to raise money for my alimony by selling Lily's cherished designer bags and clothes without her knowledge, which led to Lily finding out and promptly dumping him. "I got kicked out of Lily's place, and now I'm just staying at a motel. My savings are almost gone. I can hardly afford food." I don't care. Just make sure to pay the alimony." "What's with that attitude? Your ex-husband is suffering here. Can't you show a little compassion?" Michael's voice was filled with tears, desperately appealing to me. I sighed deeply and replied, "I had many difficult times too, but you never helped me. Why do you think you deserve help now? Goodbye." And with that, I unhesitatingly ended the call. I think I heard Michael scream as I hung up, but I felt no pity for him. Meanwhile, Lily also approached me at work, crying, "Jennifer, please, cancel the alimony claim. I've been supporting Michael all this time. I don't have any money." She tried to cry her way out of it after her anger and stubbornness failed to sway me. Her overly dramatic crying didn't elicit the slightest bit of sympathy from me. That's not my problem. Besides, this is a workplace. Aren't you ashamed to expose your disgrace like this? Lily's loud wails drew the attention of not only our department but also employees from other departments. She probably wanted to isolate me as the heartless woman who wouldn't respond to her tears, but it was clear from the looks of my colleagues that nobody sided with Lily. The situation escalated to the point where our manager had to step in, and Lily, who was acting like a madwoman, was told to stay home for a few days. Although I hadn't spread the news about Lily and Michael throughout the company, her shouting made the whole story public. Afterward, it was discovered that Lily had also been involved with another married man. As a result, she was transferred to a department known for being a bit tough. This transfer effectively meant a demotion for her, as her salary was reduced. The department she was moved to is full of strong-willed and strict part-time ladies. Naturally, these ladies in her new department were aware of Lily's affair and the alimony demands against her, so they were very cold towards her and often made sarcastic comments. Lily, crying every day, kept saying she wanted to quit. But she couldn't resign due to her debts and the alimony she owed me, leading her to endure tough days. When I recently passed by Lily at the office, she had lost all her former glamour, wearing a somber and gloomy air. Our eyes met briefly, but she, apparently too exhausted to appeal to me anymore, awkwardly looked away without saying a word. As for Michael, he managed to find a cheap, run-down apartment but was struggling with his job search. His inability to take care of himself left him looking disheveled, and he was rejected from all full-time job applications. He resorted to working long hours in day labor jobs, suffering from lack of sleep and loneliness. Still, he was trying his best to pay the alimony, as indicated in his voicemail messages. Michael regularly left updates about his life on my answering machine, always ending his messages the same way. "Hey, Jennifer. I feel like I'm going to collapse living like this. Continuing to pay the alimony is just too hard. There's no hope for the future." His attempt to gain my sympathy, likely hoping I'd reduce the alimony, was transparent, so I'm considering blocking his calls. After my divorce from Michael, I thought I was done with marriage, but then I had a wonderful encounter. I met a single father in a community for parents raising twins. Coincidentally, we lived close to each other and began to help each other out. He had also been cheated on by his ex-wife and had gone through a period of distrust in people, becoming quite withdrawn. However, he cherished his children and said they were the reason he managed to pull through. We had many things in common and shared our struggles, which naturally brought us closer. Our children got along well too, so we decided to get remarried. Now, we're a lively family of 6, enjoying our days together.